Election 2016. Now what? That's the question on many minds this morning. After the election, News Talk 820 WBAP presents a special broadcast as we look in depth on what to expect. Here are Brian Estrich, Chris Salcedo, and Rick Roberts.
As I've said from the beginning, ours was not a campaign, but rather an incredible and great movement made up of millions of hardworking men and women who love their country and want a better, brighter future for themselves and for their family.
It was an early morning, but he finally hit the stage this morning. Donald Trump, of course, is your president-elect. Rick Roberts is alongside. Chris Salcedo is as well. We call this Now What because there's a governing to get to, and we're going to get to that a little bit later on, but more reflection about last night. At what point, Rick, did you think this is in the bag? He's got it.
I'm such a cynic, and I hate to admit that, but Chris knows me well going back to California. So
Indeed.
As soon as Florida was called for Trump, I thought, okay, this guy's on a path. I'm back and forth texting with my daughter, and of course she works for the Dean of Graduate Studies at a university, and we're back and forth. And as soon as they called Florida, I thought, okay, not much needs to fall in place for this guy to have a clear path. And if you looked at it, when you first started watching, I finished the afternoon drive show at 5 o'clock. I was probably out of here at 5:30 or so. I started watching this thing, and everybody, and of course I've got like 4 televisions going at one time. Everybody's trying to figure out a path for Trump.
It's
like, okay,
it's
well,
hard.
if he does this and he does that,
Yeah.
and you mix this and bake it 350, and he can get there. And by about midnight, if not a little before, it was starting to change. And then it was, whoa, what's the path for Hillary Clinton?
And she had to sweep at the end.
Exactly.
At that point right there, you knew what was going to happen.
Are you giving me the W over there?
Yeah.
It was Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
As soon as Wisconsin went, I texted Sean. I said, you can go to bed, big boy.
Exactly. It's over.
It's over.
Exactly.
Fox called Wisconsin, but if you went to MSNBC, if you went to a lot of the other cable, they would not call Wisconsin.
Oh, really?
They wouldn't do it.
Interesting.
Because I kept switching around going, okay, you guys on the same page? No, they were not.
Right. Why were the polls wrong? We're going to have Matthew Wilson on from SMU, who's a terrific guest, who give us some insight into the polling data.
Yep.
Why do you think the polls had it wrong?
Because they were using metrics that were completely outdated. They, in particular, when the dust settles, I think here's what we're going to find out: that the black vote did not show up for Hillary Clinton. They were not enthused.
That's what the numbers look
like. They were
yeah.
using the 2012 model.
Exactly.
Right.
That was the problem.
The turnout wasn't the same.
And they were oversampling, number one. They were enthusiastic that the Obama coalition would hold together for Hillary Clinton. Didn't happen. And then Hispanics, even though their voting was up, they're not a monolithic voting bloc. You can't rely on 90% of Hispanics to vote Democrat. You just can't, and because that population fluctuates,
and especially in Florida, where some of them are Cubans, right?
Exactly.
You look at Florida. You go from north, pretty conservative in some areas.
Oh yes.
And as you get further south, it gets more and more and more liberal. And then you've got the Latino vote, you got the Hispanic vote, you got the Cuban vote. And look, they're not all jumping on the same bus.
No.
Everybody's doing their own thing in that regard. They were using the 2012 model and something else. I truly believe this. As my grandfather that raised me used to say, polls are generally good for one thing and one thing only on a consistent basis, and that's fishing.
Yeah,
exactly.
But what they were trying to do, they were trying to manipulate, I believe, the voting process by putting out polls that were heavily weighted.
WikiLeaks confirmed that for us. This was a Podesta strategy to get oversampling of Democrats to dispirit Republicans from voting. This was a campaign strategy.
Well, it didn't work.
No, it didn't work.
But they didn't know that at the time, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think that's it in a nutshell. 2012 model, trying to lump everybody into the same basket of deplorables.
Yes.
And at the same time trying to use polls to motivate the voters on their behalf, and it simply didn't work.
Let me throw out one other thing. Could it have been? Could this have figured into it at all? That Trump voters weren't willing to say they were Trump voters.
I said that from the
True.
Chris and I talked about that.
Exactly.
I'll give you a good example. I call it the if you go to my truck, you're going to find B.B. King, you're going to find Eric Clapton, you're going to find all kinds of stuff. I use the analogy. It's like the BMW downtown boys, the shirt and tie boys. They're headed downtown in the Beamers and they're rocking out to the Wolf. They got the country music going.
Yep.
But as soon as they invite you to lunch and you get in the car, boom, that button's hit.
Yes.
They're not going to admit they're listening to country music, and that is those undercover voters, as they call them, I call them phantom voters.
Like
I
Brian has Backstreet Boys on his.
Yes,
on his
but I'm never going to let you hear that.
But see, that's a huge part of this.
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
Hey, if I can make a suggestion to both of you, buy stocks in confections and in snack food. Because recreational pot initiatives passed in 5 states, including the biggest state in the union inside of California.
I've been a big advocate of hemp for a long time.
Right,
I have a hemp farm someplace, but not for the pot.
Yes.
I mean for clothing, for oils, for all kinds of stuff.
Well, one other thing on the Trump turnout and the fact that the polling data was so wrong.
Yeah.
Let me throw one other scenario. Could it have been these disenfranchised voters who just haven't been in the electorate for 2 and 3 times?
That's a good point.
And they weren't found. They weren't talked to at all. Could it be that as well?
The people in the middle.
How big is that population is what I want to know.
I think it's going to,
I know there's a significant number. I just want to know how big it is.
Well, I think we saw last night, some people call them undecided. I mean, you and I both know if you're undecided a week before the election,
Something's
you're probably, you probably shouldn't be voting for anything. But
Pat Goodell and Ed Rollins, you guys see this back and forth. These guys, the Reagan pollster and the Carter pollster talking about seeing the same movement in that the late-breaking 10 to 15% who hadn't made up their mind, they were moving toward Trump, and Goodell said, man, this has the makings of a landslide. Can we classify this?
It's close.
Yeah,
it's close.
It's borderline landslide?
I think you can say without getting too far out on the ledge there, this probably is the most historic political upset in American history.
I'll go with that.
I without a doubt. I don't think anything even comes close. And to your point, Chris, that group in the middle, how large they are, anybody knows. But I think what you had, I don't think they were undecided. I think they were both. They were so disgusted with both the candidates, they didn't know which way they wanted to go. And in the final analysis, they went for Trump.
All right, Congressman Pete Sessions is going to stop by. Congressman Michael Burgess will be by as well. We'll hear from Hillary Clinton in the next hour as well. She's finally going to speak. She didn't last night. She stood him up, but we'll see her tonight this morning, I should say, here in about an hour on the stage. We'll get to that all as Now What continues here on WBAP.